All right, welcome to the June DFW Austin San Antonio Greater Texas Tug. We are super excited for another great meeting today and are so happy that each of you all are taking some time out of your busy days to join us today. So my name is Rachel Mason. I'm with Technion Data Solutions, who along with Zoom Matrix helps sponsor this tug, and I have the privilege once again of being your host today. So happy to be here. A special shout out to the Tug Advisory Council Board. They helped plan today's meeting, and it would not be possible without these guys. So special shout out to PJ, Chris, Kobe, Iman, James, Colin, John, Homer, Amy, and Bo. And then like we usually do, I'd love to see where everyone is tuning in from. So if you could take just a moment to locate the chat and throw up what city you are tuning in from, be super interested to see where everyone is. And then as you can see, we are using a Zoom meeting for this tug. So feel free to turn on your cameras so we can see your beautiful faces. And I encourage you to utilize the chat to continue to connect with fellow Tableau users. And then be sure to stick around because we're gonna try the networking breakout sessions again. So another housekeeping note, we are recording today's meeting and the recording will be emailed out to you in the next day or so following the session. So while everyone is filling out the chat, a few announcements. The 2021 Iron Viz qualifier is now open and the submission deadline is July 2nd. Another note, Tableau 2021.2 is coming out soon, so be on the lookout for that. Our next tug, so we are taking a quick summer break in July. And then we plan on returning back to tugs regularly in August. And then another reminder, please fill out our survey. We have a question in our survey of when you would be most comfortable having in-person events again. And then our surveys are a great way for us to understand your interests and needs as far as topics for the tugs, and as well as helping us source great speakers for you all. And with that, I am going to go ahead and introduce today's exciting guest speaker. Today we have Lindsay Betzendahl, who is a Tableau Zen Master and Tableau Public Ambassador. Hey, Lindsay, we're so excited to have you here. So a little bit about her. She has been working in the healthcare field for over 15 years and is currently a consultant design specialist at Health Data Viz. Having held roles in direct clinical care, quality management, and data analytics and visualization, Lindsay has strong roots in user experience, dashboard development, and design, and ensuring data insights result in action. She is the founder of #ProjectHealthViz, a community data visualization initiative that strives to tell the stories of our health through visualization. Lindsay has a BA from Bucknell University and MA from the University of Connecticut, and currently lives in Pennsylvania with her husband and 2 boys. When not visiting, she enjoys hiking, snowboarding, running, cleaning, spending time with family, and drinking a good craft beer. And with that, Lindsay, I'll go ahead and give you the floor.
Thanks so much, Rachel. All right, let's see if I'll do the standard. Can you see my screen? Yep. Get rid of that up there. All right, cool. Actually, I don't need that there. All right. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to share my turning up the heat. These are my top 10 tricks to intensify business dashboards specifically. You'll have to excuse me a little bit that I am going to look at my larger screen. My camera's on this screen, so I'm paying attention to you all. Trust me, I just have to look over here, which is a little weird, but you know, we make do. As Rachel mentioned, I'm Tableau Zen Master, Public Ambassador, a consultant at a small data visualization firm that works with healthcare organizations across the country. And while being a consultant, and probably most of us in our jobs, we have to build business dashboards, and I've learned to really like them. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do that you may see in kind of people's public, more personal visualizations that you can really incorporate into business dashboards. So I'm starting to really getting a kick out of it. So I figured I'd share some of those things that I use with all you. And to note, everything in this example, in this workbook, are things that I have done for clients. So none of this is things that I've only done publicly. Every single one of these has been done for a client. So these are real world examples. And the second thing I want to say before we get started is this dashboard is available on Tableau Public. You can download it. You can look at all the tips. All the instructions are within it, as well as the final examples. So feel free to go favorite it, download it, and use these as soon as you want. All right, so let's get fired up. So today, as I just mentioned, dashboard's public. Any fire icon in this dashboard will have like a link to either another visualization or a web page or a blog post that may help you in your journey or provide some resources for you. So keep an eye out for that. And these are the tips I'm going to cover. So we're going to go over using images for landing pages, blank character navigation, using containers. They're one of my favorite. I am team container for anyone who's team float. I will teach you that containers are pretty sweet. We'll do some custom formatting with characters where you don't have to use calculations, how to create some cool indicator bars, floating bar charts, a sheet swap button, using a header image, fancy tables, and a return to page technique where you have, well, you'll find out when we get there. That's what we're gonna go over. All right, let's do it. Okay, tip number one, we're gonna go over how to add that custom background image. So you'll see here on this dashboard, any of these little fire icons, they'll get you to some additional resources. Tip number two is that blank character navigation. And the bonus tip I'm giving you is, if you didn't know it, you can float objects off the side of your dashboards, just like these directions. In order to do that though, you can't just drag it from here out here, because it'll say, nope, you can't do that. But you can trick Tableau a little bit and move things off to the side. So really useful while you're building things if you want to leave yourself some notes or what have you. Okay, background image. So to start, I'm going to show you, I do this very frequently. Where's my, there it is. So I create a lot of images in Figma, and I hope to finally get some videos out there on this, but I haven't yet. But you'll see here, all these were designed in Figma, and all I have to do is export this image and then go add it in. Now, you may have used images before and think this is pretty simple, but I want to show you one of the techniques about doing a background image specifically. So when I drag my object in here and I have my image, it'll pull up selecting an image. And I'll navigate to that image. And what I'll tell you first is that in Figma, the easiest thing is that that's not where I want to be. That image was created with exactly the same ratio, 1200 by 800, that I have in my dashboard. That's a little more difficult to do in PowerPoint, although you can, but you can't really get that exact value. So I like to use Figma because I set it to 1200 by 800 and I can add it in. Now, the thing here is once you put it in, you think, oh, that looks perfect. That was super easy. But you'll notice that there's some white space around here. So the trick for this is any image, you have to reduce the padding of the image itself to 0, and then double click, and Tableau will always create a container upon dropping in your first object. And that is always set to 8. And we don't want that at all. And there you have it. That's how you add a custom background image all the way to the edge. The next is the character navigation. So because I'm using a background image, and I do this a lot for clients, I actually custom make all of the different pages. So you'll see here, as an example, I have a couple of headers, and we're going to show that later. So this is all in Figma, but I want them to actually be navigation buttons. So in order to do that, I drag out a horizontal container. Now I'm only going to show the example for one, but I'll put that container here, and then I'll put my navigation button within it. Now, Tableau gives you two options for navigation, shapes and text. The thing about shapes is you can use a transparent or blank shape. Kevin Florlich has I think a whole presentation and blog post on how to use transparent shapes. However, I've found that the shape, actually, when you click it, it clicks the shape, right? So you can kind of see it. I don't like that. So instead, there's a website called emptycharacter.com. Who knew? But I found it. And I can actually copy right here. Come on. All right, what's going on with my computer now? See if I can copy. Come on. All right, well, I have it somewhere else. It's fine. There's a blank character, essentially. Let me grab it from over here instead. Here we go. Oh, that's not what I want to do either. Hang on. All right, there's a blank character. I'll show it to you here. What the, come on. There we go. So you can copy paste these blank characters. So I'm just going to copy it from here because I don't know what's going on. All right, so going back to our navigation. So now all I have to do is copy and paste this blank character, which for whatever reason takes up 5 characters, even though allegedly it's 1. And I set my navigation. So I'm going to navigate to my overview, take off my background, add a nice tooltip. And hit OK. So what you'll see here, and normally I'd add in all the rest of the buttons, but for right now, I will just put some blanks around the side. And so now I have this blank navigation button right over my sales or my overview spot. So in presentation mode, right, you select this, it's going to take me to the next page. So really great use when you're doing any kind of background images, and you can customize then the look and feel and still get your navigation buttons without using an image, which sometimes can actually get blurry if you use like image shapes. Okay, next, custom formatting with characters. I'll show you that, and that's this example right here. Using containers, so you'll see I have done this all with containers, even kind of faux shadowing, and I'll show you how to do that. Indicator bars. So if you have never done this with clients, I use this a lot, whether it's an indicator bar like this, or maybe just along the side, some visual cue to allow an executive to say, hey, I should pay attention, and it kind of smacks you in the face. So for example, this is just to show you an example of how this would work. Right, so in here I've said if any of the months are less than the average sales or profits of the month, then we're gonna like highlight that in a different color. And so that's how you can use kind of a titling effect to also be kind of an indicator that someone should go look here and do something. Right, and you'll see, if I do another one. All right, sales is a problem, but for June, profit was great. All right, so we'll go over that. Floating bar chart. So if you've never used a floating bar chart, that is what I'm referencing here, which is where you have kind of a range as well as all the values within it. And then a map swap button. And that's this example here. It doesn't have to be maps. It can be swapping for anything, but it's actually a way to just swap through. Like I have an example where you swap through 3 different things. You just click it once though, it goes to the next, and click it again, it goes to the next. So it's a little different than just swapping out sheets. Okay, so let's do the custom formatting. All right, so if you've never done this, oftentimes we can create calculations to give us an indicator of something being higher or lower, up, down, or what have you. And you can create that calculation and then put that text within your text, KPI. So it's definitely one way to do it. But there's an easier way, and it's faster. So let's say here I want to do year, and I want to see the year over year percent change in my sum of sales. So I'll go click my table calc and do my percent diff. I'm doing profit, right? Sales, no. Yeah. Okay, so let's say I have this now. Now, here's another bonus tip that I got from Kevin Florlich, is that, one of the challenges is I only want to show 2020, but if I just show 2020, as you may guess, my table calculation no longer stays that way because I've removed the value that it's being compared to and I get nothing. So there's actually another way to do that. And let's see, where's my, and that's using this lookup calculation, which I'm not going to explain it. Kevin has a whole video on it. But when I put that on here and set it to 2020, it actually maintains my my value. Now, what I want this to do is to say if this is up or down, like positive, negative, right? And so the way to do this is you go to your format pane for the value and go to numbers and select custom. Now, I use my characters. I think they're already on my screen. There they are. And just snag these and I throw them in here. So I can put this in here. And the way this works is I'll say 0, 0, 0. Oops, no, that's not what I want. So I set it as a percent, colon, and then the down one. What's happening? I'll put that in there. And then the same thing, I'm gonna format that as a percent. And then if it's 0, I'm just gonna keep it like that. So for any of these, you can format in here how you would like your positive, negative, and 0 values to show up. And so you'll see now I have that here. Now, let's just say, maybe I wanna do a different one. And when it's down, I wanna put in this fun siren, because why not? You know, we wanna really freak out the execs. So we'll do that instead. So if you didn't know, now you know that you can also do something crazy like fire, because that's what we're talking about, right? Spicing up our business dashboards. All right, so that's tip number 3. Tip number 4 is containers. Now, as Johnny Walker once said, this might look like watching paint dry, but you will see how I do this. And the instructions are here, so you can always test this out on your own. But what I want to do is I want to get those 4 boxes, and I want the boxes also have shading and spaces between them. Now, there's a couple ways to do this, but for the sake of showing this, this is going to be the easiest. All right, so the first thing we do is we drop in this vertical container, and this is going to technically be my background. So I'm going to shade that because I want there to be some of those shadings at the base, the furthest back layer behind all of my other containers. And then I'm going to change this outer padding to 25. I do like to change some padding. I play around a lot with padding to make sure things look really nice and are spaced accordingly. In fact, I use padding more often than dropping in blanks to make space. I just pad the crap out of stuff. So there's a bonus tip. Do that. It's actually really helpful. All right. Now, the weird thing with Tableau is sometimes when you have containers, you may have experienced this. You drop something else in and you're trying to make all these containers, and suddenly the container like no longer really is there, or you can't really get your worksheets in where you want them. Well, the way to get around that is to drop in some blanks. Sounds kind of silly, but it actually kind of holds the shape essentially, and then you can put in your actual worksheets and get rid of the blank. So I just dropped a blank in here right now. But actually, I'm going to use this blank for something else. So I put this blank in here. Then I'm going to add the horizontal one above and below my blank. Where's my blank? There it is. I'm going to make this white because that's going to be my separator. So you can start to see now I have this separation. And I have a horizontal above and below. Now, I also want these to be technically white. These are where my worksheets are going to lie. So again, paint drying, but put another blank here, another blank here. So now I should have, let's hope I didn't like screw this up. I was doing that really fast. Hold on. Can't even see them. There they are. All right, I'm gonna add a blank object in here. And we're gonna get rid of all the padding on that one. And this one. Yep. And move padding there. Okay. Now I'm just putting these blanks in because I'm going to use these as kind of the holders for where I would have put some objects. Okay, and then I'm going to add in, if I'm doing this right, another container here. And another one on the other side of this one. There we go. So now you'll start to see I have a container here and a container here. Now what I'm going to do is if I adjust this padding, you should start to see something. There we go. This is what I want to be white. There we go. And this one, we need to be white. We adjust that padding to 10 and 10, and this gives us our kind of fake shadow effect. This one needs to be white. All right, and then down here, do the same thing. We're gonna add in that one, and then another one over here. This white. Oh, I forgot to add my borders. That's what I wanted. All right, so you can see it's taking shape. So essentially, I do this, I don't usually add the shadowing. It was just more for effect to show you that you can do things right in Tableau. And the benefit is for upkeep, someone else doesn't have to maintain, maybe like, you know, some background image that you have or whatever. So, and I find learning how to use containers really helpful. It does keep everything clean and organized. Boom, it did it, woo! There we go. So then what I would do is now in here, I have this container, I add all my KPIs, which you've seen here. So that's how I built this. And then within this is another container with 5 worksheets within it. All right, ooh, containers. All right, next one is indicator bars. Okay, so also, if you weren't aware, you can double click right in the row and column shells and type in things. So actually, I want that here. So I just typed in min1, and this just gives me this looking like a bar. And this is what I'm going to use for my indicator. I need something to change color for the indicator. So I'm going to change this axis to 0 to 1 because I want it to fill up the whole page. And you clean it all up, I already did, and get rid of your axes. Now, if you're going to put something on the title, like home office, you can just drag that on. But if you wanted to type something custom that's not necessarily a field, then you can drag on a blank calculation, which is just a calculation with open quotations, and you throw that on label. So if I didn't have segment, I could throw that on label. And now this allows me technically to delete it and write whatever I want. So I can make this, and actually, I'm gonna add a couple spaces, clean that up a nice, and there we would have that. So then the next thing you need to do is just have something that's going to indicate when something is above or below a particular threshold that you have. So here I just created an above below monthly profit. This is a little bit of an LOD to, doesn't really matter here, but I want to be able to say if the selected month is above the every month's average, the average monthly profit, then, you know, it's or above, and otherwise it's below. So I'll throw that on here, and you'll see this one was good. Now I can check a different, these might all be, there we go. So consumers, whatever month they currently have selected, is below. So that's how you make an indicator bar. Oh, and the other bonus tip I was going to give you is if you wanted to add in, for example, like segment, which I had put up before. Well, segment, I wanted this in all caps. So if you've never done this before, another little quick double click on segment, and we can just type in here upper, and now I have everything looking really nice. So I use that a lot as well. Upper and lower are to those string calculations that you can use to change. I wish they had proper, but that's not in there yet. Okay, cool. Moving along. Floating bars, tip number 6. So I really like these. I actually learned this a number of years ago. Andy Kriebel had a Workout Wednesday where we did kind of this percentile ranges. I use percentile ranges quite frequently, actually. You'll see in this example that I did for my organization for Help Data Viz. There we go. We did something similar with kind of this percentile range. So using all the values to get a percentile range and then just showing the actual value with kind of that median. And so it adds a lot of perspective. And we use this a lot with clients where people want to see kind of maybe the min and the max and then the value for whatever, you know, they're looking at. So in order to do that, we have to do 2 things. Well, more than 2 things. But the main thing is you need to have a minimum for which that bar is going to start and then a range for where it's going to end. And we do that using a Gantt chart. Okay, so I'm gonna see. All right, so I have a minimum profit value that I've created already. So I have a minimum profit. I found out what the maximum profit is for the whole, you know, for the whole data set based on whatever segment and year I'm at. So those are, they have some fixed values, so I can obtain those in this example. So I'm gonna put minimum profit out here. Nope. Okay. Let's see here. And where's profit? Profit out here too. No, this matters, but all right. So for the minimum profit, I want this to be a Gantt. And when it becomes a Gantt, you know, here we have this minimum profit. But that's really not what I want because I want it to show this whole range. And so I have a range. Where is it? Profit min to max. I put that on size. And now my, this does not look right. Profit I want, that should be right. Maybe it was a 0 or something. That doesn't look right though. Sorry. I guess it was for that month. Oh, it was 13. All right, never mind. It's just that I'm on a, maybe I should switch this from consumer to something else. That was confusing. Okay. Yeah, it's better. Yeah, all right, it is right. Okay, okay. So now that we have this Gantt bar that's showing us from the minimum to the maximum, and again, we don't need the maximum out there because it's giving us the length is that difference. So that maximum value ends up showing up here anyhow. Now, that gives us our bar in the background, but we want those dots on top. And because I've used this fixed value, the level detail is different than when I'm going to add in my actual months to my profit one. So I'm going to add months here. And I'm going to change this to a circle. So now I'll see actually each of the months while this still maintains my bar. So if I do a dual axis here, I now have both of them together. Whoops. And you'll want to sync these axes and then you can hide them. And then we clean this up just a little bit by, you know, making these a little smaller and get rid of these measure names because we can color these both individually. You don't really need measure names on both because they're separate marks. And the last thing is I want to have a selected month actually on color. So the month that I care about, I can see a little more clearly as the rest are all more contextual. So there we have a floating bar chart. And so again, we use these a lot sometimes with hospitals where we want to see just your hospital, but maybe it's the min and the max length of stay. Maybe the average is in there, but you kind of get a sense of the range, sometimes without even having all the individual dots. You could just have the selected value, and then the rest is just contextual. All right. Okay, tip number 7. This is the swap button. So I had done this. There is an example that you can look at on my Tableau public page, that one of the mobile views I have, where I have a swap through, where it actually swaps through 3 different values that you can kickstart this off. But this is the one we're going to build that's going to just swap through these 2 different maps. I did this recently for a vaccine viz, which I think is linked here as well. All right. Okay. So in order to do this, we create, in my case, we're creating a parameter that has just 2 values. It's either your geographic map or your hex map. All right, so I already have that. And then because parameters don't do anything without a calculation, I have to create a calculation to drive it. So we create a calculation that literally is just the parameter. It's just map type. And so it's only going to be true for one value at a time. And we're going to use this when we put it on our 2 maps. So you'll see here, I have a map. I have a tile map technically. But it's only going to be true, or it's only going to show up when the parameter is set to the hex map. Now, right now, it's not, because the parameter is geographic. So if I let me show you all values. No, I guess that's not gonna do that here. If I change that, you'll see. So basically make your 2 maps, and then you just set each of them to be true for the one that you want to show up. Now, once we have that done, we're going to create the actual button that's going to drive that parameter change. And so what we want to do is create this calculation called next map type. And this is the key. And this is what you can use in any other place where you want to go through 3 different things or what have you. It's essentially a circular kind of calculation. So when it's geographic, then we want hex. When it's hex, we want geographic. And again, if you had a third one, it'd be, after this would be when it's geographic, then tile or whatever. Right? And then it just, when you click the button, it goes to the next one, because that is what you're telling this calculation to do. So we're going to put map type out here. So we want to create the button that's going to do this. This is what we're getting at here. So we're going to put map type on detail. And we're going to put next map type. Let's change this to a shape. Oop, not a square, shape. Shape on shape. Now I've already set these 2, but you'll set your shape to be whatever you want. So when the map currently is on geographic map, let me just show this parameter. So when it's geographic, so you'll see in here, my map type is technically geographic right now. The geographic map is showing, but I am showing the image is that tile map, because that's what I want people to select, to say, hey, I want to switch this to the other one. So the next map type is the hex map. And so now that you have that, and you can obviously modify those tooltips, when you put both of the maps together on your dashboard, you need to use containers. This is why, again, for this to work, you have to know how to use containers. So we'll put our 2 maps in here, and you'll see one map. And you always have to hide headers if you're going to do any kind of map titles. Sorry, when you do map swaps, because they don't disappear. So now you'll see here in my container, my tile map is completely gone because it has no value. It's empty. Again, this only kind of works with the container. Okay, so and now I have my other map in here. And then we're going to bring out that button that we just made. So now we have the button. It's not going to do anything yet. It's not hooked up, but it will be. Okay. I need to make it bigger. All right. But the big thing to do here is you go to dashboard and actions. And so here we're going to create a change parameter action. And so this is going to be our one that's going to change that parameter from hex to map, which will bring up our maps. And we're going to do it on the button itself. The parameter is the map type, and the field is going to be next map type. And I don't think I should make a difference here. Shouldn't. So that we have that. So if I select this, it changes the map. And also the chunk that came out with it. And again, so all I have to do is click it again and it'll keep cycling through. It'll just continually change that parameter for me. All right, cool. Last two, pretty good on time, I think, because these ones are a little bigger. All right. Tip number 8 was that header image. Now I kind of already gave you a glimpse of that. And I just want to show that, you could definitely make perfectly decent headers in Tableau, obviously. But similar thing applies if you want to make a header image, that the best thing, in my opinion, to do is to make it at that same size that you want. So I have these examples here are at my 1200 and I have a height of 75. I did the same thing with dropping that in here and setting in a container again. Once something's in a container, I can set this height. I can edit this height exactly to 75, remove all my padding, and it looks pristine. And so it's a nice way to give a little customization in the background, while again, still having my nav buttons and everything else below that's not floating. So nothing's floating here, which is great, I think, for someone else picking up your workbook, or just for maintenance purposes. Tip 9 is to make a fancy table. Now, what I mean by that is essentially putting a bunch of different chart types into a scrollable table without having each of these be like a different bar chart or text table or whatever. And essentially, there's a lot of good uses for this. This is just a quick example of kind of the bones of how to do it. Get back to. All right. So I started building this a little bit just to give us a head start. So I put my 2 bar charts already out here. So that's my sum of sales, and I have an average sales per order. So those are some metrics that I want to have as bars. Those make a lot of sense. But the other couple things I want to have is I want to have 2 other text things in here. And these, this one has 2 different pieces of data in it. It has items sold and number of orders. I can't put that out as a discrete field because each one of those is only a single value. I want both of these kind of together, not next to each other. So in order to do that, we kind of trick Tableau using this, fake axes essentially. So I've dropped 2 in here. I've got min 0 and I have a min negative 1.0. Now there is a reason why one has a decimal and one doesn't. And that is because if you have a decimal, you can actually change then decimals in your axes. If you don't, it won't let you adjust this, for example, to 0.5 because it's it's an integer. So if you want to just default it already, you just type in that 0.0 and you get some little more ability to change things in there. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do is on this min 0, you'll see every time we have a pill, that pill is now a mark so that I have a lot of control over. So over here, I can take my first order date and put that on label. And we're going to do that exact date so we can see it. And so now I have this basically in this mark. Now I don't really want the mark. I want this to be a text. So I reduce the size and I reduce the opacity of the color to 0. And I can actually either put this all the way to the right, I can move it to the middle, we'll just keep it to the left, that was fine. So now I have that on here. And the other benefit of this is, which is different than kind of just your header discrete value that you might do. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's, essentially if I put this here, this becomes part of my header. The difference is here, I can actually add a lot of information into a tooltip if I want to. So that's just something else you can do with marks that may make this a really fancy table. The next one I want to do is I want to add those other 2 values together here. And again, you just do the same thing. So I'm going to put on, what was it? Items sold and orders. So I'm going to get my quantity. We'll put that on labels here. And orders. ID. Let's just get a count of my orders. So now I have these 2 things in here. And again, I can just quickly move this. So items sold blank number of orders, change this up. I can format this, make this one bigger, that one smaller, whatever. And again, the same thing, just reducing that opacity and the size. And I have my custom part of my table. Make these a little bigger so they all show up. There we go. Now, one thing to know about this is that the only perhaps downside is that every measure you put out here is going to take up the same exact space in your table. So if you have only 4 things and it's taking up the whole width of your dashboard, you'll get a lot of weird space. But a lot of times, sometimes we're putting a table in a smaller section of a dashboard, or we have a lot of values, and then it works out really well. So just knowing kind of the pros and cons there. And the last thing I was going to show is how to get that kind of pill idea here. And so this is actually a tip from Ludovic Tavernier, where you can go to his link right here where he shows kind of this like concept. But what we're going to put in here is another, let's see here, we're going to do, where is it? Measure values. There we go. So we're going to measure values in here. Now, I've already set this up where the measure values that are going to show up are, come on, why can't I see it? There we go. I have a 0.0 and 1.0. Now, when you actually drag out measure values, everything will show up. And all you have to do is drag off all but 2, then double click and type these 2 in, and then remove the other 2, and you'll have the ones you want. And this is essentially so we kind of have this, again, a fake axis where we can draw these points together. So now that I have measure values here, I can drag measure name. Let's make this a line. And then drag measure names on a path. And so essentially, I'm just connecting those 2 values together to get this line. And I'm actually going to edit this axis a little bit. I think what I say I wanted it to be. I think it was like 1.5 or something, just to give it a little more space. I don't want the lines taking up the whole thing and connecting to my bar chart. All right, and then I can adjust the size and make it really big. And you'll see it's taking the shape of kind of that kind of pill idea. And again, you can play with these distances and all the spacing. But now that we have that, what we've done, like we could stop here and just add our color that we're going to do. Where's my performance? What's it called? Only I remembered what I called my calculations. That'd be helpful. Compare to target, totally makes sense. Why didn't I think of that? All right, so compare to target sales. So if I put that onto color, now I have, let me sort this differently so we can see everybody's. Sort by, well. So now I have my color on here that shows, who's below, above. For some reason, everyone's like below. Oh, it's home office. Now you could, like I said, you can end here and just have your values, and we can add, this to the label and say these are all below target. And when you add it to label, just do the line ends and just do, the start of the line. So we just get one value. Throw that, oops. But if you want to do this coloring where you have this a shaded part and then the darker part around it, it's really not very difficult. We're just going to duplicate this measure values and make that a dual axis. Oh, other things are going to break. For heaven's sakes. You make it a dual axis, and all you have to do then on the one in the front is make it slightly smaller. I'm in the wrong place here. Make it slightly smaller, and we change these colors. No, I don't know what happened here. Get that off. My colors are funny. I lost them. Line. Well, you get the idea. measure names, get that back. There we go. And so if you make this one just slightly smaller than the outside one, there we go. I did them backwards, but that's okay. So you can get this kind of rounded shape. It's just essentially you have one in the background that's a little bigger and the other one is smaller. So it'll end up looking like this. Now you do kind of get that funky thing, but it tends to look pretty nice, and I have used this with a client. All right, and the last one is what I call a return to where you came from. So essentially, let's imagine we're going to go back to our overview dashboard. I've had this happen on more than one occasion where a client says, hey, you know, I want someone to be able to drill down from this page and get to this detail page. I also want you to be able to go from this page and get to that same detail page. And sometimes you'll say, all right, well, how are we going to get back to where the person came from, right? So it makes sense from the user that if I select Texas and I drill down to this detail page, I want to go back to that page. In fact, I might not even know there's another place that's going to get me to the same page or the same information. So you don't want your user to be confused. So I'll return here. Now, let's say I'm on my customer table and I'm going to click on Ken. It goes to the same exact table. But when I click return, it's going to take me back to where I came from. So the reason for this is twofold. One, you could have your drill down table have two buttons. One goes back to your overview, one goes to the customer page. But it's confusing, as I said, if your user hadn't yet gotten there and they didn't know there was another way to get to this dashboard. That's confusing. The other solution is you could have two of these exact same dashboards and just have your nav go, dashboard 1 to detail 1 and dashboard 2 to details 2. But then your maintenance is on like two dashboards. That's silly. So I recently had to develop this so that we could get back to where you came from, which I think is super helpful. And you may be already kind of guessing based on what you saw happening. So what we do here is we create a return to parameter. And this parameter is just true or false. And so we're going to use this to hook up our worksheet, kind of similar to this, the map button, but not quite. All right, so we just have true, false. And then what I do is I make two calculations, literally a true and a false, that just say true and false. And what we do is we put that on our details, which allows us to, on our dashboard, have a parameter action that runs this calculation and will run just true and the other one will run just false. And I've used this technique in a number of different ways. Once you get the concept, it can be really valuable for making things happen on your dashboard. All right, so all I have here is a blank. This time I actually just typed it in. You can, like I said, type right in there. We'll get our blank. You would clean up all the lines and we have nothing else here. This is actually a shape that is blank. So I have, and by blank, I mean it's transparent. I can always share how you can make those if you didn't know. But now that I have this blank shape, it's not going to show up as anything, which is great. And I do the same thing for return to overview, except for this one, I'm just going to put that false calculation on it. That's the only difference. So then what you do is you take both of these worksheets and you will put them in a container on the details dashboard. So you'll see if I go to my layout pane, in this vertical, I have my return to customers and my return to overview, which is currently squished and not there. So this is how this works, is because all I need to do now is set up a return to customers. So the return to customers means, so I'm on this page, the worksheet that's the only one that's available is going to just take me back to where I came from, right? So I hook up the return to customers to go to the customer table and the other one to go to the overview. So that's one half of the issue. That gets me back. What I still need to do is drive that parameter so that these show up appropriately from where I came from. And that you have to do on the starting dashboard. So on this dashboard, I have a parameter, which is my from customer. And again, very similar to the map swap button. On this table, when I click this table, the parameter is my return parameter. The field is true. This is the one that I have as true. And when I click on this dashboard, it will change that parameter to true. When I change that parameter to true, only that worksheet will show up. And that worksheet is hooked back only to the customer table. Boom, we're done. So that's how we do that. And I think that's pretty useful. And with that, we've got my 10 tips plus a couple bonuses of true and real things that I have done in business dashboards to make them much more intense and user-friendly. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this will be available to download. I'll unhide it right now. You can go to my Tableau public page, favorite it, download it, use it, what have you. If you have questions, let me know. You can follow me on Twitter at Betzendahl Data, or subscribe to my blog at betzendata.com, where I do have a number of blogs about some of these tricks. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. If you guys have your cameras on, help me give a round of applause to Lindsay, because that was an awesome presentation. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them up in the chat. I saw one earlier. We'll take just a few minutes for questions before we pivot to our networking breakout sessions. But a comment earlier, I think it may have been in tip 1 or 2, when you were doing the navigation bar and you were copying and pasting that space. Do you have to copy and paste the space, or can you just hit the space bar, was the question.
Yeah, so it's actually not a space. So interestingly enough, I tried spaces before, but they don't, for whatever reason, they don't hold because they're not really a character. So this website does have, okay, that's weird. You can copy and paste it. You can also just copy and paste it from mine too. And so that is actually a character similar to something like these characters. So it takes up 5 characters for whatever reason, just like any emoji actually takes up more characters than you think it should or whatever when you're typing in Twitter or something. So it's the same concept. It's just something that happens to be kind of like a blank shape, I guess, in the Unicode type characters. So, and that essentially it holds its value. So it works really well. But good question.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any other questions. You're getting lots of praise in the chat right now. I'm going to repost your link to your Tableau public in the chat. But I think that's all for now. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Thank you for taking the time out of your day and for putting in all that prep. That was an awesome presentation. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I know it's probably something that's tough to ask questions with as we're like rapid firing them, but hopefully folks can go check it out, and that'll be helpful to you as you kind of like rethink through these things, or,
Definitely. Well, cool.
Hey Rachel.
Yes.
Richard Kobe. Seemed like there was a question. I don't know if you answered it. Can we do tip 6 for a timeline? Dots placed on a quarter or monthly scale for tip 6.
That is the floating bars. Yeah, so you can do that for any, it could be anything that you're using as your ranges. It doesn't have to be time, I think if that was kind of the question, like what you could use. Let me see, can we do tips for a timeline? Dots placed on a quarter or monthly scale. Oh, I see what you're saying. Like, so I guess, are you saying so the thing is that you're talking about that axis actually being like months. Yeah, so the thing is, it does have to be a continuous measure, which could work. I'd have to think about that. That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for catching that, Kobe. Okay, well, I think that is now all the questions that I see. So thank you, Lindsay. At this time, I'm going to pivot over to our networking breakout sessions. So if you guys were here for last month's meeting, we are trying something a little bit new with utilizing breakout sessions as an opportunity for you guys to network with other users around specific topics. So I'm going to allow time for our board members to give a quick pitch for what each room is going to entail, but basically each room will be facilitated by one of our advisory board members. And James and Homer, if you guys want to give a quick pitch for the first room and what you guys are going to cover.
Hi, James Parsons here. Homer's going to be helping out as well. So yeah, come along to see a few cool tips from others in Tableau or share it yourself and do some networking. So we need 4 to 6 volunteers and people to come watch as well. And you'll get about 4 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks, James. And then Kobe, do you want to give a quick pitch for Tableau Prep?
Yeah, the last time we did this, it was really just sort of networking, just to talk about, we have people that haven't used prep at all. We have some people that are using it that had some questions about how do you do this, wild carding, that kind of thing. And we did some show and tell also. So it's sort of a networking show and tell, and how do I do this?
Awesome.
It was fun. Yeah.
Exciting. Yeah. And then Chris, the last breakout room.
Yeah, everybody, we'll be having a breakout room around strategy and adoption. So we'll cover everything from Tableau blueprint to training strategies, even how to build like a center of excellence. So it's really any topic you want to discuss, but if you want to share some best practices or maybe have a challenge that your organization is facing, come join our breakout room and we can chat about it.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And so at this time, I'm going to open the breakout rooms, and give me 1 second here. And even if you don't have something you want to share, but you just want to participate or listen in, feel free to do that. You guys are more than welcome to.